I'll kind of lead into for those that are on, lead into what drove some of this. We've had some questions around the state from our members, and also we did a presentation with recently with NRMCA and so forth on CTAC and so what we want to do is make sure that we're doing all the education we can on trying to get the message out and make it easy to use. We also have a task force put together that we're actually starting tomorrow morning, and it's really we've got a task force of our partners across the country, and you'll meet one of them here very shortly. But we also have just a statewide group that we're meeting with tomorrow, with mostly board personnel and so forth, saying what else can we do to enhance this. So JT is here, and we'll let him kick it off and do some of the introductions. Here you go, buddy.
Thank you, Todd. So I appreciate everybody coming in. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with our Tech Tuesday for this month in November of 2024. First things first, please do remember that this is a CRMCA association event, and we don't want to be talking about anything in regards to competitiveness and pricing in regards to any products or anything like that. So keep that in mind. Also, if you are interested in some membership or want to get more involved in CRMCA, we do have many things going on throughout the membership, not just CTAC, not just ACI, but if you are interested, please do reach out to us and be part of the program. And if you want to be a part of the technical committee as well, get some of your ideas into the forefront with the technical committee, please don't hesitate to reach out to me as well. So with that, we are here for Tech Tuesday. We're going to be talking about CTAC, observing improvement, but we want to thank our sponsors of this series, Burnco, Zypex, Criso, St. Gobain, GCC, and Wholesome for their sponsorship of these events every month. So appreciate your sponsorship, guys. So observing improvement, both myself and Christy Martin, the executive director for CPG out of Kansas City, will be talking about the program. I'm going to go into really the general idea of what the program is and what we're seeing across the country. And then I'm going to hand it over to Christy to really start to talk about what she's seen in regards to the Kansas City area over the last couple of years, 3 years now, I believe, as well as what they've seen benefiting them and some successes as well. So hopefully you guys get an idea of really where this program can actually be utilized from not just the region, but from your company as well. So as we start talking, do please interrupt. Don't hesitate. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself, raise your hand, put something in the chat, and ask the questions. We don't want to wait until the end to try to remember what those questions were, but so just ask them as you go. If you see something that you want to bring up, please do bring up. So first off, what I always like to do is before we even talk about what CTAC is, I like to talk about what we want to see in the field. What should we be seeing in the field? And some of the pictures that I like to show off is really some things that we do see out in the field. And it's a wide range of different processes, from sampling to testing on the ground, as well as on the tailgate, and interestingly, testing slump inside the truck. If you are familiar with testing procedures, that is not acceptable because it has to be one vibration-free and rigid surface. Trucks have suspensions, so it's not quite meet those requirements. But these are the things that we want to make sure that everybody's doing the same thing consistently for all of these procedures. This leads into also initial curing as well. And it's like there are variations of different options out there that can be used, from easy cure boxes to trough tanks to buckets, and also wood chips for insulation in the winter times. But sometimes you got to question it. What's really underneath that cardboard cover of those 5-gallon buckets? Are they submerged cylinders? Are they insulated? What's happening underneath those? It's a questionable issue. But also, is this a field cure cylinder or is this a standard cure cylinder? We don't know. If it's a standard cure cylinder, it does not meet requirements. And it's like we want to make sure that they are all cured properly initially, as well as when they get back to the lab. So these are, again, things we want to make sure that are happening consistently across the board. So how do we do that? That is utilizing teamwork. And teamwork's not just having an app and being able to solve the problem, but it's how do you solve the problem? From testing firm, you want to make sure that there are training opportunities for the testing firms. The producer, they want to make sure that there's consistency in that those concrete results. And contractor, you want could potentially be tracking information in regards to that testing, as well as the design engineer and owner having that confidence and being able to complete those projects on time. It really does affect every single step of a concrete project, is that testing. It is an important process that we evaluate over the course of every project to make sure that it meets those specifications on a project. So if we are meeting specifications, are they meeting the standards as well? And we want to make sure that everybody does it the same way. And you can keep hearing me say that over and over again. So what is CTAC? CTAC is essentially, it ensures consistent and reliable testing, enhancing overall quality and accuracy of concrete testing. What does that mean? That means we want every single concrete test to be consistent and valued properly. You know, it's like we don't want to be questioning if those test results are valid. If the testing was done properly, we know that the test results are more accurate. So, so what is the tool? The tool, it is for that consistency. And I've talked about a couple of these things already, but we want to first and foremost minimize false test results. And it's like by observing regularly out in the field, with what these technicians are doing in the field, we want to make sure that we're reducing the potential for those false test results. If they're doing it consistently, we again have that confidence in those results. So it runs through field observations. They are simple and direct inputs. I'll give you an example of those on the next slide. And then all of that information goes onto an online dashboard. We can utilize that information for multiple things. That's from improving the performance of the individual. We can open team communication, make those projects more accessible for everybody that's involved in that project by having that conversation about what's happening on that testing side of things and improving it on the testing, not just saying that, oh, technician Joe Schmo over here is doing this, doing slump incorrectly. Well, guess what? Tomorrow, if you don't talk about it, is he still doing it this incorrectly? So we want to make sure that open that communication. We can also market the companies, and it's like there has been in the past in Colorado testing firms that actually utilize this information to market their companies as they are doing things correctly as compared to everybody else on the average. And then also to be able to really improve education. Over years in the past, we have utilized this information to change the training processes of ACI here in Colorado, because we've seen the values of what's coming in those observations. So the app itself, we've got now 3 different selections that you can go through. The first one is your cooperative concrete quality observation, which is your on-site observer. Those 4 questions that you see there. Are they ACI certified? Are they sampling correctly? Are they testing the fresh concrete properly? And are those cylinders going into the initial curing environment in the right place with the right equipment, with the correct temperature monitor or control devices? In addition to that, we do have a collective initial curing review, which I've got an example of what that is, as well as the reporting dashboard where individuals for observers, they can look at their own information. Company managers can review the information for their company, as well as partner administrators such as myself or Christy can actually review the data and the information that's being submitted for the entire region to see what's happening across the region as well. So if you've been in the app, you see those 4 questions that I already showed you. That is basically, it just goes from one slide to the next on your phone. It'll ask you the question from one click to the next, and it'll go through all of those options and be able to submit it. This process takes the entirety of the process that it takes for a technician to test concrete. No more, no less. And that's like if they are taking that setting up for testing, you can introduce yourself as the observer. They start sampling. You're starting to record what those observations are. As they do go through the tests, you're watching them do those tests. You're selecting those options as you go through. And then as you see them put those cylinders into their initial curing environment, you're going through that final question and then submitting that information.
You mentioned.
Go ahead, Todd.
You mentioned those spec summaries.
Yes. So one thing Todd mentioned just now is the spec summary here is when there are ASTMs that are highlighted in blue, you can actually click and review a brief quote of what that ASTM standard states for that specific item. So it's very helpful for those observers that, yes, they're going to be certified, but not everybody remembers every line from every ASTM. I will be the first to admit that I do not memorize the ASTM standard numbers either. So ASTM C172, I believe that's sampling. From what I see, it looks like that's what it is. So
well, it can be used to educate job superintendents, owners, whatever, if as you're looking at those. So it's an educational tool as well.
Yes, thank you, Todd. So the other observation option that we actually are going to be going live this week with as well is the initial curing option, which is a review. These are going to be for project site personnel where you're going to be an individual out on site, such as a contractor foreman or a supervisor or somebody that is authorized to be on a project, may or may not be a ACI certified individual, but they are regularly involved in the concrete process on a project and on a project regularly. They can go over and review what they see at the initial curing environment after the fact, not during a test, but anytime after the test. So what they're going to be asking is what does the equipment and temperature device look like? Just like question 4 on the full observation, just saying, okay, this is what I see. I see a cooler. I see the cylinders are submerged. I see a heating device in that water as well. So I'm going to click on those. And then it's going to ask, can you read those specimens? And it's like, are they identified correctly with a project number, a ticket number, a date, that type of stuff, which they're supposed to be identified with. And if you can select yes or no, and then also what is the date of that specimen? And it's like date of the specimen is very important for those initial curing environments because they can be there for at least 8 hours after final set, but up to 48 hours. So that date is really good to be able to identify. And then also the current temperature of that initial curing environment. Very specifically, those cylinders in the initial curing environment should be held to a temperature of 60 to 80 degrees for most concrete strengths. or standard concrete strength. And so if that range is outside of that temperature, is the initial curing process really happening consistently throughout those 20 or those 8 to 48 hours? So any questions before I go on to the what we're seeing across North America? Comments or anything? No? Okay. We'll move on. So the results so far across America, and it's like I've got a couple basic numbers I wanted to share with you guys to just see what we're actually seeing using the CTAC program so far. But first and foremost, just to reiterate to you what those partners are. And everybody in green across the North America, those are our current partners as of today. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 partners that are involved in the program right now. They are using the program minimally to extensively. So I wouldn't say that everybody is doing as much as they can, but they're doing as much as they want to at the moment. There are a couple of partners that are currently onboarding, which will be starting hopefully here in the next couple months by the new year, which is also Washington and Oklahoma, as well as some other interested across the country. So we have data from across the country right now, according to those 11 partners across the country. So what we're seeing is really some interesting information that honestly is very consistent with what Colorado has seen over the years as well. For the 4 main questions, what you see there is that first question is the technician certified? 82% of the time. That makes sense because you're going to have at least twice a year, you're going to have hirings of individuals. Those individuals may or may not be certified. They've got to get the training in anyway. So sometimes they're going to be on projects and not certified. But as long as we see that consistently high number, I don't think we have much of an issue there. In regards to sampling as well as performing those tests, those are significantly lower. We're looking at right around 60% for both of those. Could we do better? Yes, we could actually look at some of the information that we collect and really determine what we need to do and what we need to change in our training processes on a regional basis or a company basis to improve those valuations. But really the biggest concern that I think has come out of CTAC and is consistent across the country is the initial curing environment. And it's like what's being followed. Only 22% of the time over the last 12 months, this is through September of this year. Actually, no, I take that back. I did update this to October. So this is through October of this year. 22% of the time, initial curing processes are being followed through ASTM C31. That's a big problem. And the question is what do we do about it? And it's like, are these numbers going to fix the problem themselves? No, we have to find ways to actually use this information to determine what can be done. And this is where we go back to that communication issue. And it's like, start talking about this on a project by project basis. We have individual project reports for company managers that they can access through the database and pull up on a regular basis and share with the project team and say, hey, this is what we saw last month. What can we do to make it better next month and be more consistent for the rest of the project so we don't have issues? Because if you don't have an issue, that doesn't mean everything's going smoothly. And so we want to make sure that we utilize this information as best as possible. We can even look at this even further across the country and see some of the information in regards to that initial curing. Nothing being submitted or used for the initial curing environment is 20% of the time. But if we look at temperature monitoring control, we talked about this before, more than 50% of the time, there's no thermometer or heater. And initial curing has to be between that 60 to 80 degrees for those up to 48 hours before they get transported to the lab. And if that's not being done, how can we prove that those cylinders are being cured within that time frame or that temperature range? And to prove it more of why this specifically is so important, NRMCA has actually put out some information just in this last year across the country, including New Mexico, Maryland, as well as Colorado, about curing cylinders within those ranges versus outside of those ranges. These are all various cylinders that were cured at various temperatures, both high and low temperatures. And you can see across the board, they are anywhere from 15 to 28% less strength in regards to what they should be at. So your strength loss is significant if they're not within that 60 to 80 degrees for initial curing. So it makes a big difference there. So with that, any other questions? And otherwise, I'm going to pass this over to Christy.
Hey, let me introduce you, Christy. So I've known Christy now for several years. Had the pleasure of working with her on several projects. And by the way, just I think a year ago, she was Promoter of the Year from NRMCA. So she just does a fantastic job in that geographic area for her members and so forth. So Christy, always a pleasure, and I appreciate you helping us out on this.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, my Colorado friends. I love my Colorado friends. This whole program is just a blessing. I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited to let your Tech Tuesday people in on the secrets that we have, not that we have any secrets. So I encourage, just like JT did, jump in and ask questions, interrupt me. I'd rather you ask when you think of it. So we are new to this. We're only 3 years, we're toddlers, we're 3 years into this. Getting it off the ground and getting people out and trained and getting on their phones and get the app going, get them familiar with it, took a little bit more than I had originally expected, but we're finally there. And 3 years into it, I'm so excited to share with you what we've learned. So first of all, yes, we agree that the observers must be ACI certified. We also ask their companies to make sure it's someone that they believe in and make sure that this person will be fair and professional, and it's someone that they think has a future in their company, because we don't want just anybody with an ACI certification out there. So we want professionals, because this is integrity and things are at stake here. We do ask our observers, whoever they work for, to try and do 2 observations a week. Now, some of you may think, oh, that's not very much, because it's not. But some of you also think, wow, there's no way I can do that. And so it's just an ask. These observers work for many companies, and they work for the company, and the company makes a decision how many observations they do a week. But we're hoping to get the quantity, because data is knowledge and data is information. So where we are having big success is where we have participants, companies, ready-mix companies, et cetera, that are incentivizing their observers. I have one particular company who does an outstanding job of including how many observations they do in their annual review. And so they are given a goal, and it is measured, and it is unbelievable how much of a difference that can make. And so we're very appreciative to have that partner there. We have ready-mix sales, ready-mix QC, QA that are observers. They have to have their ACI certification, but we've just picked up 2 contractors. And one is a concrete contractor who has a QC person who is very ACI centered and certainly certified. And then we also have a general contractor that is testing the program, and they have a new program within their general contracting world where they think that they've learned, surprise, that if we do it right the first time, it saves a lot of money and heartache. And so we keep beating our head against the wall, but we think that this is true. And so this particular general contractor really likes this program, and we're just kind of dipping our toe into it. And then we also extended it to 2 municipalities. Here in Kansas City, we're right on state line. We've got Kansas and Missouri. We've got state line down the middle. We drive over it every day, don't even know what we're doing. you know, we're going. And so what we did is we picked a municipality on the Kansas side and a municipality on the Missouri side. And we have senior inspectors in each of those two cities that are our tests, our beta testers that are doing CTAC. And boy, is that enlightening. I'm learning a lot, that's for sure. So it was a little slow to get going, but we're going at it now. Next, please. Jump in if you have questions and just stop me. Okay, so here's our little dashboard. And so this is year to date here in Kansas City. And I think this is really interesting. So these are our 3 years numbers. So on the far right-hand column, stick with me, but we have done 741 observations this year, year to date, January through now in Kansas City. Not bad. There were 23 observers that did those 741 observations. And there were 19 different testing companies. I didn't know we had that many in Kansas City, but we do. 19 different testing companies, third-party testing companies that have been observed. And of those 19 companies, 108 different technicians in the field were observed. Does that make sense? So that's our database for year-to-date this year. So the 4 main questions that JT has gone over thoroughly, you know, they're there, but I want you to look at that. Is the tech certified? 75% yes. It was a little lower what he just showed you. On the national average, it was in the 80s. And we're just a smidge behind that. And I think it needs to be closer to 85 to 95% if I could have my druthers, but we'll get there. And let's jump down to cylinders stored correctly. We are at 11%. Isn't that embarrassing? I mean, I'm humbled, that's for sure. But it's something we can improve on. If you look the 2 years before, 33% and 16%, and this year 11. To be honest with you, I think getting started, the data was just a few people. And now that we've got 23 observers going and we're more consistent 3 years later, I do think the 11% is probably a more accurate number. But I scoot down a little bit further and go down with me. Let's look at the air. 96% correct. Woohoo! That's awesome. Yeah, if you look up above, it says test sample correctly, 55%. Well, those tests we're looking at right now. So unit weight, 70% done correctly. Air is 96% done correctly. Temperature, 98. Slump, 95. And is it done in time in the 15 minutes allowed? 99. So I'm going to go back to unit weight here in a minute. But those 90s, we're rock stars. I am very happy with that. But that's not what we're here for. Keep going down. So on the next slide down, we are looking at no protection. Were the cylinders cured on site? And 93% of the time, no protection. Again, that's why we're doing this. We have got to get that fixed. That is our challenge. So are they in cooler and buckets? 56% of the time. So the different things there, the fabricated box, the insulation, the water bath, you can check multiple. So you could check cooler and water. You could check different things. But the bottom line is 93% of the time, we're not doing it. And I'm sorry, but in Kansas City, 365 days a year, it is not between 60 and 80 degrees perfectly those days. It's really not, trust me. And we have cold, cold, and we have hot, hot, and that can be in the same day, just like there in Colorado. Keep going down. This is where we're learning. And this information, we have a problem, Houston. No temperature monitor. JT just mentioned this. So if you look at that, temperature control storage, no temperature monitoring. So remember I said there was 11% of the cylinder stored correctly? Okay, so of those 11%, still 58% of those 11% still had no temperature. They might have been in a bucket. Did it have water? I don't know. Did it have a temperature gauge? No. So it's still not 100% correct. So we are learning, and this knowledge is power. And we're finding the data where this kind of makes sense. We know what we're doing. I'm thrilled to be able to say that air, temperature, and slump are really doing well. I didn't know that till we did this. Now I'm relieved and I can move on. I want to look at the unit weight just for a second before we go to that slide. Unit weight is 70%. We have an issue. We have found out through using CTAC that most of the municipalities in our area are not doing unit weight. So some of our observers were marking it wrong if they weren't doing it, which is the wrong thing to do. You should only be observing what they do. So if they're not doing unit weight, they're not doing it wrong. They're just not doing it at all. And that's not what we're observing. We're observing if they're doing the test correctly. So we're going to get that changed. I think it's a little higher than that. But the message is that we start looking at the municipalities in town and their contracts that they do with third-party testing companies. Guess what? They're not apples to apples. They're not the same. And we're finding in this day and age when we're trying to save a dollar, that maybe we don't need unit weight done. So I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but most of you probably already know that air, temperature, and slump are required to be done. And unit weight and cylinders are optional. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about this later, but they're only optional. Unit weight doesn't have to be done if you don't do a cylinder. But if you're doing cylinders for strength tests, then the standards show you have to do unit weight. We'll come back to that. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. I talk fast too, by the way. Slow me down if I get going too fast. So to me, this is interesting. So of our testing companies, I think I told you we had like 19 or something. So the supervisors can use this information for a tool. I blocked out the names of the companies, but each line is a different company here. So on the first line, there were 5 technicians observed, and the total observations in the last year were 16. So that's not very many, but if you look down the total observations this year, like look in the middle, 107. So that company has had 107 observations for the year. That's my number one testing company as far as quantity of testing being done. So guess what? They're on my call. I've seen them 3 times here in the last 4 months. I'm going into their office. We're having conversations. They have a heavy hand in what's being tested in the market. So I ranked each of the testing companies, and I don't want you to see who they are because it doesn't really matter for this purpose. But I also wanted to rank my top 10 so that now I know who I should be working with the most to make sure we're all on the same page and helping each other out and doing communication. So testing companies, their supervisors can use this for an evaluation tool. These evaluations, you can see each of your own. Like if I'm testing company A and I have 10 technicians in the field, I can see my 10 people, and I can see how they rank. I can't see anybody else's. I can only see mine. But I can see, oh, look, well, this is a real life example. There was a company, this guy, the third party testing company manager says to me, well, this says that Joe Blow here is not doing the slump, he's guessing. I said, that's what that note says in that observation. He goes, well, he's my best one. He wouldn't do that. And I says, well, let's just keep looking. So we looked on down a little farther, and there's Joe again. But this time he was observed by a different observer by a different company. Guess what? It says in the notes that he guessed the slump again. Well, that manager right there in front of me picks up the phone, calls that young man in the field and says, hey, I've got a question. Do you ever guess what the slump is when you're doing your tests? He goes, yeah, all the time. I've been doing this, 15 years, and I know what a 4 slump looks like and an 8 slump looks like. I do it all the time. He goes, okay, I'll talk to you later. So he looked at me and he goes, okay, that's my best guy. I've got egg on my face. I am so sorry. He goes, we will fix that. So he can use it as an educational tool. I don't want to be hateful about it. I want him to use it as a useful tool. I also can speak to in a situation where someone was doing such a good job, they had 100%, 100% right on all their tests. That person, I need to find out. I know they got kudos. They got some love. I don't know if I think they got a raise. I need to verify that. But I think someone actually, a tester, got a raise in the field, a technician, because of this program. That is an awesome tool. So evaluations, information can lead to discussions. You can track specific projects. I had someone today ask me if we could track this one project to see if there were any CTAC. And so I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to go into the system. I'm going to geotag that area and pull up the testing for that and see how the test and the notes were for that particular job. Okay. And if something breaks low, if you're the testing company and you have a cylinder break low, can't you go to that observation and see what the notes say? And were there pictures of the lids off, the cylinders laying on their side? There are more pictures attached to these things than Carter's has pills, if you even know who that is. I'm aging myself. But my point is that pictures can be attached to these files, and you can see exactly how the cylinders were handled that day that they were doing that. And that has actually answered a lot of questions. All right, next. Okay, so this is my teaching sheet. We go ahead. Is there a question? No? Okay. So we had an event last week. It was our annual municipal concrete paving, parking lot, and flatwork seminar. And we handed this sheet out to everybody because we could from their results talk about this. Number one, what's covered in the contract with the third-party testing companies? The first one up there. Well, not all contracts are the same. I just mentioned to you, air, slump, and temperature are required. Unit weight and cylinders, and if you have cylinders, how many, by the way, are additional testing by AS Team C31. Well, the reason we do cylinders, right, is we want to know what they're going to break at because we want to know if there's maybe strengths, and most of the time they do, but occasionally they don't. But if you're going to do a cylinder, you have to do a unit weight. So these contracts, go back and look at your contract. A lot of my municipalities don't even have unit weight in it, but yet they require cylinders. So I'm challenging them. Well, who's right here? You guys aren't even following the specification. And then the other thing is when you're going to do cylinders, how many cylinders? A lot of testing companies will do like 1 at 7, 2 at 28, and 1 at 56. So that's 4 cylinders, etc. But the average of 3 consecutive tests must be equal or greater than the specified compressive test. And if you don't have 3 cylinders, then you really can't make a fair judgment. And almost all of my contracts only have 4 here in Kansas City. So automatically, they don't really have enough to qualify to meet the spec for acceptance, truthfully, yes or no. So that is something a lot of people didn't even know. And it also depends on what size cylinder. If some people are on the older, bigger cylinders or the smaller ones. And so over to the right of this, the standard curing and the optional curing. This is something I never paid a lot of attention to. But standard curing is when you're going to use the cylinders for acceptance. Are we going to accept this concrete or not? Well, if you're going to use it for acceptance, then it's stated in 318 and 301 that the standard curing consists of initial curing. You got to do it right. Got to put it in something. You got to have that thermometer in there. You got to track it. Transportation to the lab and final cure in the lab. All 3 of those meet for standard curing. And if with this program, with CTAC, you can track at least on the job site. You can't really track the transportation to the lab and the cure at the lab, but you can control what you can control. But the optional field curing, this is where I have some job sites that were confused. Field cured specimens are not used on the basis of acceptance from the concrete delivered to the plant that the ready mix producer delivers. They are more mimicking the curing on the site and to evaluate the appropriate stripping forms or curing, things like that. So, and oftentimes field curing are left in the open anyway, because you want them cured like in the field. And we can get into a battle on that one. But so there's a huge difference between standard cure and optional cure. And a lot of people don't understand the difference. So you need to have that conversation because a lot of the people who have the contracts don't even know what they have. If I could scoot down a little bit, who provides what to cure? Who's in charge? Who's in charge on the left-hand side? Who provides the curing stuff? Okay, well, if you're a testing agency, and there's a big difference here between ACI 301 and Master Spec. Master Spec is more of the architectural and the private industry world. A lot of these high rises and different things and buildings per se end up with Master Spec. Master Spec is the testing agency's responsibility to put them in a safe spot, put them in something safe, and to take care of the temperature and record it. ACI 301-16, and I've read it 3 times, it's not very clear, truthfully. It's a little vague. It implies that it's a testing company, but it's not legal document if you're going to look at that. But I'm going to get ahead of myself here. But part of who provides what to cure is also reporting the report, excuse me. So you have to report the results to the owner, the architect, the contractor, contract manufacturer within 48 hours. So many times the ready mix producer, the testing company will give it to the owner and that ends there. And so you're actually required by those standards to give them to everybody. And I try and encourage that. the results have to include all the results of everything we just did, as well as the storage information, how they were stored, supposed to be recorded, the temperature is supposed to be recorded. All of that's part of the official curing. And we've already beat it with a stick that is 60 to 80 degrees, which I think 99% of you probably already know that. And then the contractor, though, according to ACR 301, the contractor is supposed to provide daily accessibility, a secure space for the storage that's not going to get run over with a tractor or a piece of equipment, for the initial curing and the field curing of samples for both. They are also required to provide us water, source of water, and electrical power. Now, what's hard, what we hear is, which contractor? Is it the general contractor or is it the concrete contractor? And I assure you, my concrete contractors in Kansas City don't think it's them. Now, I can get the general contractor's attention, but guess what? This is the most important decision from here on. I'm going to jump down to where it says meeting. Who needs to be in the pre-con meeting? Here's what we are doing with all this information that boils down to right now, right here. Who needs to be at that pre-con meeting? Well, there's lots of pre-con meetings, and they're so long and boring that no one wants to attend them. And 9 times out of 10, the concrete producer is not there. The third-party testing company is sometimes there, but not always there. And the concrete contractor usually gets invited, but not always. And so I cannot emphasize enough, no one leaves the pre-con meeting, not one. No one in Kansas City leaves the pre-con meeting without a decision with who's providing the equipment, who's providing the water, the electricity, who's doing what. We are not leaving the meeting until the testing company or the contractor or the job site owner, whoever that is in charge of it. And if you don't accomplish anything else, but that is it. That is our goal. If you solve that there, then you won't have any problems. But if you don't solve that there, you're not gonna have a result. You're not gonna have a good result. You're gonna have a mess. And back to where we are right now before we start anything. So also on the sheet, it kind of identifies all the ASTMs and ACI related. So discover what's happening in the real world. I get talking too fast. Compare to what the standards are. Communicate with the stakeholders the proper standards and procedures. That's what I'm doing right now. And keep testing and doing those observations to see if the cycle improves. It is so hard to get going, but once you do with this program and you start getting results and you start talking about this, what I'm talking about with you, I've talked with city engineers, I've talked with general contractors, I've talked with concrete contractors, I've talked to my board of directors, I've talked till I'm purple in the face and I'm just getting started, and now I'm talking to you about it. We can't stop. If we can figure out what's in the contract, is it right? Do we have the tests all in there? Are we curing them properly? Do we know who's going to do it? Then we will make some progress. Next slide, please. Did I beat that with the stick enough? So here's what I want to leave you with. Many of you right now, we all are dealing with 1L, Portland limestone cement across the United States. Relatively new, hundreds of years we had type 1, 2, or 1 or 2 or whatever you had in your market. But now we have the 1L, and things are not the same. They are the same, but they're different. And while we were trying very hard, the cement industry tried very hard to make the 1L as close to their 1, 2 as possible. They really worked hard at it. It's not exactly the same. And when, as you all know, with this carbon neutrality initiatives that are all over the place, they're at the national level and then they're also at the state level. The structural engineers have 2050, where they are committing to net zero by 2050. The architect world's doing it by 2030. Portland Cement, everybody's got their version of how to get carbon under control and do the green initiatives. But with this pressure that we have to, the cement is a great portion of the carbon issue. And so if we can reduce our cement, we all know we can reduce our carbon footprint. So the 1L is reducing it up to 15%. I think most of us are probably at the 10% level. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't agree that some of our brakes and our cylinders are lower than what they were when they were 1, 2. And we've all had instances where they've broken lower than we thought they would, and kind of shocked us a little bit. Now we're all in defensive mode and we're trying to play with this. I'm here to tell you that JT said that nationally, that CRMCA came out that study that if you don't do the curing properly as the way you're supposed to, you're going to have between 18 and 25% reduction in strength. Well, right there's your insurance policy for your 1L. So if we can follow CTAC and if we can get these curing cylinders done correctly, then I think we'll all be okay. But as this world grows and we get greener, and that 10% we're at now, we go up to 15, and in Europe they're at 20, and times are changing and things are changing, and our cementitious materials are changing, and the world's not the same. And this is a go fast. The society that we live in, this drive through, get your coffee, get your McDonald's lunch, go, go, go. It's in our world in construction. And this is what we're living right now. So I think this is CTAC's magic wand, is to help us control the cylinders. And I think we can help ourselves and save the insurance policy that we've lost with the 1-2 that we don't have anymore. Does that make sense? I think it does. But everybody has to be part of this solution. Next slide. So success stories. Let me wrap it up with this. I have testing companies who never, ever, ever had containers in the field go buy 200 coolers a year or last spring. And to me, that's a huge success because they never provided them ever. And because of this, they are now. Now, they got to get min-max and water. Another completely different testing company went and bought they had the coolers, they didn't have min-maximometers. Now they do. Guess what? They have to record the min-max. They're in there, but when they pick them up, they're not recording it. So, baby steps, baby steps. We're getting there. I told you that we have a field technician that's getting all kinds of kudos for being 100% correct and pat on the back. Better a pat on the back than a stab in the back, that's for sure. Okay, so the municipalities that I have, the city inspectors, the two, they use the CTAC app to make sure that testing's being done correctly because it's their reminder. But guess what I learned? The inspectors can't accept a failure. They can't accept if it's wrong. That's why they're there. So they're more liable if they record something is wrong. So now what's happening, CTAC's not being used as intended, except that it's still, if they're not rotting that cylinder correctly or the air pot or whatever, they have to stop them and they have to correct it, and they can't record it as incorrect. They have to have them do it over. So now I'm looking at all of these city inspector reviews and they're all 100%. I'm like, how is that happening? Well, it's because they can't accept anything less than 100% for the city they represent. But at least they're using CTAC as their monitor and keeping them on track. So it is a success. One of the municipalities, the first time this one inspector used it, the guy was doing it on his tailgate at the back of the truck. And he says, I'm sorry, but you can't do that. It's not level, blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you what, it's the typical, the technician had an attitude and fixed it, got it on the ground and fixed it. Next day, same inspector, same technician, same job, different day, had it in the back of the pickup truck again. He goes, what are you doing? We discussed this yesterday. He goes, you mean I do this every day? He goes, no, not only every day, every time. And so he goes, oh, you should have said that yesterday. So again, it's communication. The huge decision, a huge discussion between CPG and one of our testing companies has been about cylinder breaks. And most of you know how cylinders are broken in compression in the machines and the labs. And it used to be that we used a lot of the sulfur caps, which was stinky and not as safe, etc. In today's world, we 99% of the time use neoprene caps, cheaper, safer, etc. The neoprene caps don't break the same way the sulfur caps did. And so we've ended up in this huge discussion because they've got type 5 breaks. And we've had this big discussion. If you start reading about how to report those, it actually says in the report that you can't report a type 5. You have to report a 1 through a 4. If you have a type 5, you have to take it to full failure before you record it. And yet they're putting type 5 in all these things. Well, we've ended up in a conversation with ASTM about this and with the committee that does this. We're having a conversation with the committee people who do this and asking for some clarification. So again, there is a huge benefit to taking this to the national level. And JT and Todd do this beautifully. JT goes to all the ACI conferences, and he is our mouthpiece for CTAC nationally. I think you guys are so lucky in Colorado to have this team. Todd and his board of directors, along with JT's guidance and making it happen, are just unbelievably fantastic. And you guys are lucky to have them there. And the last thing, what have we learned? Just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. Don't worry about it. Go do it. It's a great tool. It is the power of communication. It creates a conversation. We all need more training all the time. We need to encourage pre-con placement, and don't leave that meeting till we know who's doing what and who's in charge of the cylinders and how we're going to be cured on site. We need to invite ready mix and testing companies to the pre-con meeting. We need to use CTAC as a positive reinforcement tool, not just negative. Got to be positive. And pictures speak 1,000 words. Pictures in the app are attached to that file when you put them in, when you created a observation. And I have files and files and files of pictures. And when things don't go right, you go back to the pictures and they kind of answer a lot of questions. So that's it. I'm done. Love y'all.
Thank you very much, Christy. So with that, and it's like, I know Christy said a lot of stuff there, and I've shared some before that as well, but it really just comes down to, and it's like something that we hear all the time. There's not a problem until there's a problem. And it's like, it's really not the matter of the problem itself being the issue, but what you do and how you take it is really what really rules the roost. And it's like when we talk about communication, if we don't have that communication, and it's like, how are we going to improve anything? And how are we going to be able to say that there's not a problem if we're just waiting for the problem to happen? And it's like, let's just fix the problem before it even starts. That way we have that successful project in the end. So with that, I usually say thank you, but I'm actually going to not say thank you just yet. And I want to lead to really, and it's like, well, how do you fix that problem? And it really just boils down to getting access today if you don't have it. And it's like, if you are part of the program, part of the CTAC program, have access, and you're not sure what to do right now, you haven't logged in, or you haven't even logged in the first place, and it's like, go to the website, concretetac.com. Just really briefly, I'm going to go through, it all of a sudden didn't want to load. So yeah, but I wanted to really just briefly go through really what the website has to offer in regards to information for you. And it's like, in addition to what I've shared, and it's like, if you want some history about what actually where the program came about, we do have some information about that in regards to who we are, where we came from, where we started back in 2015, some good historical information really to share about that. But in addition to that is we've got this education page on our website. And what this is in addition to our Tech Tuesday today, where we were talking about some of the successes, we actually do have links to some previous presentations on the program, how we developed it over the years as well, talking about really what the app is, simplicity, as well as as we go through, we have a training program that on a monthly basis, I have an open Zoom meeting that allows anybody to jump onto the Zoom to ask questions about how to get involved in the CTAC program, how to do specific things within the app, or whatever it may be. And it's like, I'm always there every month on specific dates. We actually have them posted. We just had one just last Friday, but we also do have another one in December as well. And so if you have that information, it's good to utilize. But also, if you're not sure about, can I be an observer? Well, we've got that information right there as well. So in addition to really the training videos for concrete testing. And so if you are certified or just getting certified, you have employees that you want to get part of the program. And it's like, we do have training videos for every single procedure that that is referenced in the CTAC program. And those videos were created through CRMCA. We actually share them for all of our ACI certifications as well as globally through YouTube. But lastly, we do have on our login page, if you think you have access, try to log in. If you don't know how to get access to the app on your phone, go to the login page. We actually have a couple videos here in regards to how to log in as well as and access the reports. How do you follow that process? How to install that app onto your phone, as well as giving approval for your access to your location, making sure that you have that available. And lastly, also, we do have the FAQs that are available as well, which answer a lot of the questions that a lot of people have asked over the years. And it's the same questions over and over again. And in addition to not just what is the CTAC program, but well, can I take pictures or videos? Yes, you can. And it's like what experience is needed. That explanation is right there as well as some other information in regards to let me see if I can find it. What if there's on-site resistance? That's a common question and it's like, well, as an observer, if I go out there on a site and I get butting heads from these technicians, what do I do? And it's like, and so we give you some general information on how you can approach that. We always want you to be able to introduce yourself and become friendly, become that professional friend on site with those technicians, because if you're able to do that and be that partner with them, then that entire team on those projects will lead to more consistency as well as success as well. So with that, just want to point out that it's like I wanted to show how we got started, but also the education ACI videos. Since 2020, we have had 238,000 views. So somebody has been able to figure out how to do these procedures correctly. Now the question is, can we get everybody to do it consistently?
Yeah, JT told me that this number of views, and I was blown away. I thought, we had some, and he'd been telling me, well, that's since 2020, and that's primarily on those how-to. So the whole country is trying to learn how to do these tests and so forth. So trying to learn, because that's the biggest consumer of all those, is those how to do the testing right. So very impressive, but now it's the follow-up is got to be there. JT, go ahead and ask.
So really, from there, I just want to open it up one more time to questions on what we discussed, not just the CTAC program, but how Christy has maneuvered the program for the last 3 years in Kansas City as well. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions if you have them. Dakota, I've been watching you just stare at our presentation and be really intent in watching. Do you have any comments or anything?
I do. I got some for Christy, and I have some for you. I'll start with Christy. Christy, you mentioned how many observers you have. Can you go back to that slide or just talk through that? How many observers do you have in the Kansas City area?
I'll have to have JT back up. There we go. I have 23 that are active. I actually can have more, but here's the catch. Our association, technically we can have up to 50, and I'm not done filling them. But as I fill them, like you see last year I had 28 and I'm down to 23. I've had people change jobs, etc. Those 23 are good for the most part. There are people that are doing it. And what I'm telling people, if they're not doing an observation in 3 months, I need to turn your seat at the table to someone else that's going to use it. Because, it does cost money to do the program, and I'm not concerned about the money part. I'm just concerned about getting quality people involved. So I am slowly, like I said, have two contractors. I love that we've got two contractors and they're the right people. And I love that my ready mix, but not all my ready mix are bought in on this. I have like 7 ready mix producers in the greater Kansas City area ish. And they voted 100% that they wanted to do this, all of them. And when 3 years into it, I have 2 that are faithfully participating consistently. I have a lot of turnover in another one, and we're just getting back on our feet. And then the others are hesitant. And I guess just like with anything, we have early adopters and followers. So if they don't want to do it, I don't want them to do it. Did I answer your question?
It does. And then how many, I mean, other than observers, testing companies, how many other roles do you have within your group that are actually getting in and looking at whether it be reports or anything like that? Do you know?
It's me.
Just
Well,
you?
each of the companies that's participating, observing, have a company manager. So ReadyMix A has, 8 observers, and the boss of those 8 is the company manager, and he can pull up and look at the dashboard of his people. Anything his people observe in the field. So if you've got, your 6 or 8 people who are doing it, and then you can see anything, so you can see the testing companies that they're observing on the projects they're observing. So if the company manager were to use the dashboard, you could track just a project. You could track one of your people and how many they're doing, and tracking for, like this company does, for how many they do a year. Then they have a goal so that they can reach their goal towards their review at the end of the year to help me get there. There's all kinds of things you can do with the dashboard. It's a great tool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, do you think some of those managers do you think most of them are actively looking at that, or are you jacking them up if they're not, and say, hey, I
I
think
have to
there's
tap them on the
issues here?
shoulder. No, just like the managers, or just like the people doing the observing in the field, everybody has so much to do. There's not enough time in the day. And so no, I'll be honest with you. I have, when I find the time, I'll sit down and pull up each company's like third quarter or year to date or whatever, and send them what they can already pull up in a PDF. So they have it, so they don't have to do it. So they say, and I'll make a note and I'll say, hey, look at this, so-and-so's doing really good, or I'll send a note with one to another company saying, hey, I noticed this person hasn't done one. Are they still there? And yes, they are still here. So, but it takes a lot of time. And that's the hard part. It is.
Yeah.
It's the hard part.
To add to that comment in regards to what the different roles are, you've got your observers that can perform those observations. They can view their own observations, or if any other observer watched them test, they can look at that information. Company managers, they have access to their company information for any of their observers, or from a testing firm standpoint, they can log in and view any of the information for any of their technicians that were observed as well. So they have those different roles. And Jonathan actually asked, why is there a limit of 50 observers? For Christie, it is 50 observers for the greater Kansas City area and CPG because our rate, basically our tiered cost system for the CTAC program, which we share to each of the associations in the region, are based on production for the year from NRMCA, based on NRMCA numbers. So Christie has 50 because she doesn't do as much production. As comparison, California, they're part of the program. They have a much more production for concrete per year based on NRMCA. So therefore, they have 300 observers. One thing to add to that is that number of observers is just specifically that, any number of observers. So if there is a company manager for every single one of those observers, that does not count against the observer. So if we have, like in Colorado, we have somewhere in the range of 60 or 80 different testing firms. If we look at the one-man jobs as well, we could potentially have 60 different company managers looking at their own company information, but on top of that, 50 or 100 observers as well. So Christy, the same thing, where she's got 19 testing companies that were observed so far. Each one of those 19 testing companies could have a company manager looking at that information, as well as 23 more company managers for each of those other observers that are on there. So those don't count against that limit of 50 observers.
Yeah, and the short story is we made this up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I sat down with JP and we said, well, what should be these categories and so forth. But if someone comes to me and says, man, I need a couple more observers, hey, let's talk, because this is our deal is to fix testing, not to so
we're not making money on the
We- we
program.
don't-
Absolutely not.
we don't let red tape get in the way of doing the right thing here. So, well, Dakota, I think you had another question, and others. as well.
Yeah, I think you answered some of those already, JT, so I appreciate you doing that. Christy, I just want to say I really did appreciate the stats. It's interesting to find out that I work in Colorado, South Dakota, and Wyoming outside of Kansas City, but it's all real similar issues, right? So that's that's really interesting. JT, I also appreciated your national stats, which I think is also very alarming. And one of the things that I don't think our quality control group, I'm saying my company, does a very good job of is truly tracking how those concrete cylinders are stored in the field. And to me, because I can't even tell you if it's good or bad or 11% or 20%, because we do a pretty bad job, but I can tell that based on the alignment, I'm sure it's probably in the similar number. So it just really hits you in the face. So I really appreciate that data. So one thing I do have for you, JT and Todd, is if at some point I would like you to talk with you about the pricing structure for other ready mix organizations in my different areas to see what that looks like. And I don't know if you want to talk about that now, Todd or JT, or send it to me later.
Yeah, no, I would like to talk about that, and just so everyone's aware, we've run into a couple things as this program's growing. Number one, Dakota just mentioned some concerns about the initial curing. So we said, look, I want the ability. I'm not ACI certified, Dakota. I don't know if you are, Christy. I don't know if you are. But the point being, we need others to go in and drill down on initial curing. It's the 80-20 rule. You just saw the data. In fact, in national data is 80-20 rule of 22% of the time initial curing is being done correctly. That means 78. 80-20 rule. That's the problem. Forget the rest. I mean, let's tackle the big animal. So we have ways now drilling into that, and that's all brand new. JT's just rolling that out. I really think that's going to help us. The company structure, Dakota's referring to the fact he's got multiple states. Well, we set this up through state associations. Again, we said, how do we do this? We went through the Christies of the world and CalCMA, TACA down in Texas. But we also have companies that have crossed lines, and we can. Do we have that done where we can take a company like
that's
Lean,
next in line?
Yeah, that's next to where Lean, which is the company Dakota's with in multiple states, and we can say, look, if you're signed up here, you can take this other areas. And we're nonprofit, so we're not getting rich off this thing. We're trying to address testing, and so we'll work out that pricing structure, but I don't see it where it would really make much of a difference to us, because it's no more administration really. So we'll work through those, but we can cross state lines. We ran into the same thing with Iowa and Minnesota. They've got companies obviously that go on both sides, and And then
Same
you got
thing down in
you got-
Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah, and you gotta look at a different recording base. To look at that, that makes no sense. So we're getting all that, again, the bureaucracy out of the way. That is the next thing on the table.
Thanks for that. We can talk some of that later, Todd. And then JT, thanks for going through the website for us. I jotted down the path that you kind of took us through, where I will focus. A follow-up question to that is there anywhere else on that site or your favorite spot on that site that might show the best overview of the CTAC program, kind of from start to finish, maybe even if there's a video? And if there's not, maybe I think we should maybe think about that. That says, here's how to truly use the app from start to finish, with a report based on maybe a project report or something like that.
Yeah, I have separate guides for that are not necessarily linked on the website for how to go through the app and what to anticipate, because you have different options, and it's like if it's a yes or a no, and what do you talk to technicians about. I do have separate presentations that talk about that specifically. But they are not linked in. One of the things that you just mentioned in regards to a report, we do have under the FAQ, how do I view reports for myself or a company manager? This is yet another one of those scribe videos that goes through actually going through the filtering and tab exploration of what you can do to actually click on the filter and what can you sort or filter down and look at a specific project or a time frame or a specific employee and be able to save that and actually look at those reports after the fact as well. So we do have things building that to what you want, but I think you have a good idea in regards to actually going from step A to step Z as well.
Okay, that answers that. Thanks, JT. I do not have any further questions, Todd. Sorry I took a bunch more time.
No, not at all. Anyone else?
I think we're good. Well, Dakota, I think you asked the questions for everybody anyway. So so thank you for that. No worries on taking up the mic on it as well. So I do appreciate the questions. Again, Christy, thank you very much for sharing your information from CPG and Kansas City's area. And we will be posting this video for anybody to be able to share on YouTube as well after the fact. So that will come here in the next day or two to everybody that was registered. So you will have access to that. Please do share it. And really just ultimately contact us if you have questions. If you want to get access, you're having issues and what we went through on the website and talked about during this presentation, if they didn't answer it, and it's like, reach out and ask, please do. We'll get you guys squared away. I appreciate it.
Thank you for everything you guys do.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Christy.
Nicely done, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.